Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we're taking a look at contemporary life here in the Marianas, and it's my pleasure to welcome to the show Chenoa Bynts-Anderson and Jesse Pangelinan for the first half. Kim, Jesse, welcome.
Thank you.
Catherine, how are you?
Excited to be here.
What a broad topic, contemporary Marianas life, but you were trying to get a handle on it, Kim, with a book you're putting together. Tell us what this project is all about.
Well, when we started reading the literature that's out there on the CNMI, all we could really find was other people's perspectives, mostly from a military standpoint, of what life is like on the islands. And we wanted to catch a snapshot of what it really is like for the residents here. And we're such a diverse group that we'd like to get bits and pieces of everyone's experience and share it. For posterity, really.
What motivated you to undertake this project?
We got excited about it when we heard about the Humanities Council grants, and we had been wanting to develop a course at NMC on contemporary issues in the Marianas, and it just sort of fell together. We applied, we got some funding, and we started about a year and a half ago.
Who are your partners on the project?
My co-editor is Ayani Burrell, and he would be here today, except for he's actually in Rhoda right now, collecting stories, hopefully. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about yourself. When did you get here to the Marianas?
This is my second time around, so altogether I've been here like 7 years. I came first in 2006. And I was here for 2 or 3 years. Then I worked in the Middle East, and then came back here in 2013 and have been here since.
Well, it's really nice of you to kind of take the lead along with Ayani and kind of corral the rest of us that might be interested in sharing our stories and, like you said, putting it down in writing for posterity. And Jesse, you're one of the people that has volunteered to share a story in this upcoming publication, which will be out next year. Tell us a little bit about the story that that you shared.
So the story that I shared is basically about my experience as a convert to the religion of Islam, but coming from a very traditional Chamorro and Roman Catholic background. I was born and raised here in Saipan. Grew up here for 19 years of my life. Then when I turned 20, I moved to New York State. And I started just working, but later on I decided to go back to school. So you know how that goes, just go back to school, get your degree. But at the same time, while this was all happening, I felt that I was on a spiritual journey. I was kind of trying to find the purpose of life. So I was just trying to search for some kind of spiritual purpose, I guess. Yeah, and my experience, I hope that I articulated enough of it in my article, but I felt like I was still missing a few. But I just wanted to let people know, my story as a Chamorro native of the island of Saipan, and how I, why, like, people ask, like, how would a person who grew up in Saipan all of a sudden, want to become a Muslim?
Yes, please answer that question.
Yes.
Share a little bit.
So the story goes, as you know, like in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a big garment industry here. So, as a not a consequence, but as a result, a lot of people from Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan migrated here to work at the garment factories. And there was one family that lived in my village in Saduk Tasi. They were a Pakistani family. And I got to know them when I was in high school. And it was just a kind of like a high and by relationship. Nothing too deep about it. Just see them at school, chew betel nut together, you know. They were pretty much, you know, Saipanese or locals by that time. But when I met their father, there was 3 brothers. When I met their father was a little bit different than any person I've ever met. Because, you know, he was a straight Pakistani from the Punjab, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Well, anyways, just sitting down with him, and I mentioned it in my, you know, in my article about how I was just impressed with his hospitality, his honesty. I mean, he was an older male, but he treated me like, you know, I was his equal in a way. So, like in Chamorro culture, it's like we do respect our elders, but there's this boundary where we can't really sit with the elders and talk with them because, you know, there's a dynamic, you know, in the Chamorro culture, like that.
So a bit of a separation.
Like a separation, but it's not really. How should I say this? It's not like set in stone, but it's like it's a norm. You know, when the elders are sitting together, you don't talk. You know,
listen.
Yeah, you listen. Mm-hmm. If they give you advice, you don't say, "Oh, I disagree with you. Actually, I think you're wrong." No, you just take the advice and you go, right? But this guy he just gave me advice about how to be a good person. You know, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, and he would give me like little examples of people we would know in Saipan. So I just say, okay, that's cool. But the real change was that one day we were talking about, and this was after 9/11, right? So when 9/11 happened, you know, we can say that Islam was put into the spotlight, but in a very negative spotlight. And he was from that region. I mean, he grew up with people from Afghanistan, with people from that region, and he started telling me about them. He said, you know, Jess, these people are not really this way. You know, these people are very, you know, they respect people. They're hospitable. So it made me curious, you know, like, okay, so the media must be wrong because this guy never lied to me. You know, he never exploited me or used me for my money, you know, so I trusted him. And then one day we were just eating together, and I gotta say too, like that's the first time I tried like real Pakistani food, like some good curry. So I was always going to his house to eat, you know.
After that, huh?
After that, yeah. But just after dinner, we were sitting down, and he was straight up like, Jess, Jesus' name is not Jesus, it's Isa. And I said, what? You know, in my head, I was like, what do you know about Jesus? You know, you're a Muslim. But he told me, yeah, Muslims believe in Jesus, we believe in Mary, we believe in the virgin birth of Mary, we believe in Abraham, we believe in Moses, we believe in Ishmael, we believe in Isaac. And he started naming all the biblical prophets, and I was blown away because I knew them, you know.
But you thought it was all foreign, really.
I thought, like, you know, God forbid, like for me, right, like I thought Allah was some statue somewhere in the middle of the desert that these Arabs and these Pakistanis worship. But, you know, even that name Allah is just the Arabic name for God.
One of the things I really like about your article that you submitted was the difference that you were talking about between living in New York as a Muslim and living here, and how accepting the community is here. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure that you face some negativity in other places, and that is sort of what the way the media is covering it a lot is Islam in very negative ways because of the terrorist activity, right?
You know, fortunately, even though I was living in like New York State, I mean, 3 hours away was where the World Trade Center used to be. And people still feel that hostility. But where I was at in Albany, I was in the capital, it was more like hidden. Like people weren't really too open about their fear or the hatred for Muslims. But I did experience a few, like, people make fun of our clothes, you know, because during Ramadan we go to the mosque a lot to pray, so we wear like the traditional garb. And I've heard like some comments, you know, like, oh, why is that guy wearing pajamas? You know, things like that, right? But I've never been threatened or, you know, harassed in that way.
You're wearing something on your head today.
Yeah.
What is that?
This one, I guess the Pakistanis and the Afghans, they call it a pakol. right? It's this hat in particular. It's more of like what Afghans would wear. Yeah, Afghans or people from like Peshawar, Pakistan would wear.
Does it have a religious significance?
No, it's more like a. It looks nice to me.
It's an article of clothing.
Yeah, it is. It's an article.
And I thought it was, and then you got your NMC T-shirt
got my
on.
NMC T-shirt.
and your khakis on. It was so funny. You walked in and you and your wife were color coordinated. You were wearing
yeah,
and she was also wearing some traditional garb.
Yes, my wife does wear the traditional headscarf, but she's from Singapore, so very hipster Asian culture over there. So their contemporary culture is really interesting as well.
So how do you feel being a Muslim interplays with being a Chamorro living in the Marianas today?
Honestly, I feel very comfortable because my family and my friends are very accepting, and they know that I'm still Jesse, except I'm not the Jesse that drinks a 12-pack and wants to start a fight somewhere. Because I used to be a really bad person, in my opinion. I used to get in a lot of trouble, but honestly, it was Islam that made me wake up to the reality of, just living a clean, a peaceful life and using my skills, my wealth or my privilege to help others. That's why I teach rehabilitation and human services at NMC, because my background is a social worker, and when I was in New York, I counseled people with addictions and mental health diagnoses, and I loved it. And it also made them see like, okay, this guy, he's got a big beard, he looks like this, but he's not trying to suicide bomb this place, like just some crazy talk. But don't get me wrong, it's not Islam that has these extreme factions, it's the Muslims that have the extreme factions. There's Muslims that they're just so twisted already because of the politics, because of the culture, because of the history of the place. There's so many complex issues that created such, bad organizations like Al-Qaeda or even now ISIS, ISIS being so extreme that even Al-Qaeda is saying that they're extreme. But when I learned my Islam, I learned it from people that learned it in the traditional setting. Like my teacher was an Afghan, but he learned in Syria. There's a lot of issues that people see on the media. Donald Trump talks about it, all these, people that basically Islamophobia gone out of control, like the wildfires in California right now.
So what is it you would like people to understand about Islam?
I just want people to understand that Islam is not a Bangladeshi religion. It's not an Arab religion. It's a religion that has people from all over the world, and I'm a living proof of that. I'm a Chamorro. My parents are Chamorro. I still eat red rice and chicken kelaguen. I still eat sashimi with hot peppers and wasabi. All these things that, when we have tourists come over, like, hey, come here, try this food. Right?
Yeah. As long as it's halal.
As long as it's halal, yeah. And we have halal food here. They sell it at Jolton.
Kim, what a great story for Jesse to share for the book. What does it mean to you for people like him to really open up?
I think it's wonderful, and I think that so much of the literature and stories seem to be focused very narrowly on language maintenance or where did this food come from, and so to get some color and variety, and we have people that have submitted stuff that are from different demographics here in Saipan, from the Chinese community, from the Korean community, and in different places, and the Carolinians. I've got people from Palau that have submitted. We've got people that were born here but have lived most of their lives as a business person in Hawaii or in Seattle, or that have written and submitted their literature. So I think it gives you an idea. And it's funny, one of the things that he brought up, and that is the closing of the factories, really resonates with me, because when I was here there were still a couple of factories, and it was a lot of Japanese. At that time the Japanese were the big investors here, and we had a lot of Thai festivals, the Moon Festival, And when I came back, they were gone.
Yeah.
They were gone. There was hardly any Thai community. I looked at a census poll recently. It's less than, just a little over 100 Thais left. And instead, there were a lot of Russians. When I came back, a lot of Russians and Koreans. And even within the time frame of 2013 to now, a lot of the Russians have gone.
Yes.
Koreans seem to be dwindling, and now there's a lot of Chinese. And that whole thing about people living their lives and being part of the community and then moving on and not being here anymore, I wanted some kind of record of what it's like here right now, because we changed so much. And we're not just one food, one language. We're multicultural, and there's variety. And I wanted to capture some of that, you know? And so that's why it's so exciting to get stories like Jesse's. And everyone's in the community to sort of paint a picture of what it is really like here. We're so blessed, really. I mean, when we walk into the store, we see people of every color, every size, eating all sorts of things. We get to try so many things, but for some reason it's not been written about or talked about that much. So maybe this is just sort of a little baby step in that direction, you know?
Well, I think it's a giant step.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to hear from another individual who has submitted for the book. Jesse, thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
We'll be back after this break.
Did you know that you can donate up to $5,000 to the Humanities Council through the CNMI Education Tax Credit Program? Donations from individuals and corporations qualify and can be used to offset your local wage and salary tax, BGRT, and earnings tax. Call our office at 235-4785 to see how you can support humanities programs in our community and obtain a tax credit for your donation. Sizuus Maasi, Olomai, and thank you.
Welcome back to Your Humanities Half Hour. Today we're looking at a contemporary Marianas life, a project put together by Kimberly Bynts-Anderson. Kim, what is it you really hope people will get out of this book?
I hope people will get the idea that we are a complex culture, that we have a lot of really unique stories, and that living here is not just limited to one festival, you know? So I hope people just start to get to know a little bit more about the various people that are actually living here right now. Yeah.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce another contributor to the book, which will be out next year, none other than Chenoa Bynts-Anderson. Gee, what a coincidence. You share the same last name. How can that be?
Well, I'm Kimberly's daughter.
So nice of you to contribute to Mom's project.
She couldn't say no, you know?
Yeah. I was, my arms were twisted.
Yeah.
Both of them. So I'm writing a piece about diabetes on island, and in specific limb loss. And it really just goes into depth about how the cultural perception of pain and how the services available on island are affecting the kind of treatment that people are receiving and how effective those treatments are.
Wow, a cultural perspective of pain. Please share what you found.
So when we looked at the literature and we looked at previous research that had been done, there was a greater expectation for a cultural perception of pain that made people hesitate to seek healthcare. When we talked to healthcare professionals through interviews, a lot of them indicated that sometimes the patients that come to them don't necessarily want to talk about their problems or seek help, especially for something they see as small, like a cut that can later become infected and lead to an amputation. So far, through the research we've done interviewing and surveying actual patients, we haven't found a huge response from them identifying this as an issue, but we have found it with the healthcare professionals themselves identifying it as a problem.
How about the healthcare the healthcare side. What are you finding there, or what have you found there?
So we looked at some previous studies that have been done, for example, one in 2013 and one in 2006, which did full surveys of what kind of services we have on island and how many people are using them. And we hope to continue that and try to see if the people felt there were adequate services, because there had been indications that there weren't enough. However, most people replied, actually everybody replied, it was a very universal response, that they felt there were adequate services. However, they also said that they weren't necessarily using these services, that they weren't going and getting the checkups even if they knew they needed them. And they weren't utilizing tests like a simple blood glucose test you can just do on your finger frequently like they should be.
Do you have any theories as to why that is?
There are a lot of factors that are contributing to this. It's called non-compliance with the checkups they should be getting and also their medication. Some people, it's a financial burden and they don't feel it's important. Some people feel that they can turn to local medicine and that it is a alternative and a better alternative for some people, or that's how they feel. And then other people also just don't prioritize it enough. They don't consider it a big issue. Everybody I know has diabetes. What's it a big deal if I have diabetes? Why do I have to take my medication regularly?
And I thought that was one of the things that was really interesting about their findings. Is like when they talk to people and ask them, "Is somebody in do you have diabetes or somebody in your immediate family?" The answer was always
it was almost always yes. 80% of respondents said that either they had diabetes or somebody very close to them had diabetes, like an immediate family member. Or a spouse. So,
but we all know that the level of diabetes is really high here, and one of the Chenoa's articles going in with another section on with one of our other contributors who's looked at foods and the impact of changes in food and the culture on health, and so we know that it's an issue. But one of the things that she's brought out with their research is that we have, I'm sorry, you can correct me here, but we have one of the highest amputee populations. Isn't that what you said in comparison to?
So when you compare it to U.S. statistics, a diabetic person on island is far, far more likely to have an amputated limb than their counterpart in the U.S.
Which is that what she's talking about, maybe that cultural link of waiting too long to report even something like a small cut or something that they think it's little. I can deal with it, right?
Do you feel, or did you ask or discover that people with diabetes had an understanding as to how they got diabetes?
So that is a very big topic and something that wasn't necessarily the main focus of this study. And it was also, we focused on a lot of things, so we have less time. We've had less time to question about all of the little details. But we did ask them if they understood what their medications were for, why they were receiving certain treatments, and why it was important to do preventive measures, like for people who did not have diabetes or who had pre-diabetes. And a lot of people did not fully understand the reason for those.
Chenoa, why did this particular topic interest you?
Well, actually, I was sitting on a plane one day back from a biomedical conference that I went to with some NMC students, which we were attending in Portland. And I was talking to some local individuals that I was sitting next to about diabetes. And one of them was a doctor, and I'm not sure if they would like their name to be mentioned, so I won't say the name. But we were discussing these issues and how common it is to see in patients. And that made me start wondering, why is it so bad here? Because from all the literature and from also what I'd observed in the U.S., this wasn't as big a problem there. So I hope to try to find that out.
Kim, give us an idea of what are some of the other topics that people have contributed on, and how people can get in touch with you if they're interested in being a part.
Okay, so to go with the latter, to get in touch with me or Ayani Burrell, the best thing to do is to call NMC and ask for Language and Humanities, and ask for either one of us, Kimberly or Ayani. And we are coming towards the end of the book, but we are definitely open to late submissions for the next month or so, and any good stories. What we have so far has been really eclectic and really interesting. We have some articles on contemporary dance, how it's developed. We have articles on foods, traditional foods, and contemporary takes on traditional foods. We have articles from various demographic communities. I think I mentioned that previously. We have articles on what it's like to be born here, but not a local, and so identity conflict, and also from local residents that have moved out of island, off island, and built a life elsewhere, and how they maintain those family connections. So if it sounds eclectic, it is. We've got art, we've also got poetry, but I think it's what I mentioned before. If you can imagine taking a panoramic picture and zooming in and trying to catch a glimmer of what life is like today. There's no way that we can get everybody's experience, but we are definitely trying to get as many perceptions as possible, and it's really exciting. And one other thing I'd like to mention, I will be in Tinian the week after Christmas for a whole week looking for stories, and we need stories from all over the CNMI. And so we'll never say no to an interesting story and experience. And again, to reach us, the Language and Humanities Department at NMC, 237-6870, and we'll be happy to hear from you.
Well, we've been speaking with Kimberly and Chenoa Bynts-Anderson here in the second half of our show. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing, and we wish you every success with the finalization, compilation, editing, and finalization, publication of this book next year. Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.